Okay, Rabotai, we are on Daf Yud Amud Aleph, page 10A1. So we had a question that we ended off with, and I want to kind of pick up with it now. There's a beautiful sefer that was brought to me on Masechet Makkot. Someone's like, my yeshiva, we this, we that, we wrote a book. Here's the book. It's on Makkot. And it's an amazing sefer. So many of the questions that we've come through are spoken about in that book. So I was just given a gander yesterday, or 2 days ago, whenever it was, and we asked the question, if you remember. The Gemara asks, we have 3 cities in Eretz Israel, and 3 cities on the other side of the Jordan. Ask the Gemara, why do we have 3 and 3? One set of 3 is for 2.5 tribes, and one set of 3 is for the remaining 9.5. So it doesn't seem to be equitable. It doesn't seem to be divided equally. It doesn't seem to be proportional. So the Gemara answered, what's the answer? B'Gilad, shchichi rotzchim. In Gilad, there's more people that kill, more killers. And as well, the Gemara says, well, what about in Israel? There's also an element of disproportion, right? Because if you remember, there's top to bottom, and then there's 1, 2, and 3. Meaning that if you lived at the top or at the bottom of the country, you'd have to travel all the way to the middle one, right? So let's say it's 10. Let's say they're equidistant at 10 miles. So if you're here or you're here, you're 10 miles away from the nearest Ir Miklat. However, if you're in the middle of the country, right, you could never be more than 5 miles from Ir Miklat because either would go up or down to the top, to the second, or to the second to the third. So the distance that you'd have, the top and the bottom of the country, was greater than the distance you'd have in the middle of the country. The Gemara answered, similar answer, B'Shechem shchichi rotzchim. In Shechem there were many rotzchim, there were many murderers. We talked about that actually in the breakfast in the class. In Shechem shchichi rotzchim, why is it that in Shechem there was an abundance of rotzchim? Why did that happen? So we asked from Mechilat Yosef, exactly. So we asked a very powerful question in the Gemara makes no sense. Because what are the Ir Miklat over here? The Ir Miklat is for people who kill unintentionally. So you're telling me now that there's murderers there. Murderers are intentional.
And I thought we didn't have a lot of murderers because they didn't really kill a lot of people back in the day.
No, you didn't have a lot of murderers that got a death penalty from the Bedin. But you had people murdering. Okay? So the Gemara is telling you that in Gilad they're murderers. In Shechem they're murderers. So who cares? For murderers, you don't need Ir Miklat. Right. For murderers, you need guillotines, you know? You need Sai, Sekila, Sereva, Herek, Vachenek. You don't need Ir Miklat. So why in the world would that be the Gemara's answer? So I answered, first answer was yes, but if you look in the Mishnah tells you that the second the guy kills, inadvertently or inadvertently, right? He goes to the Ir Miklat. So you needed more Ir Miklat in a place of shchichi rotzchim, when there were more murderers, because they're running right away before we ascertained what it was. So that would prove the opinion that everyone would go to the Ir Miklat as soon as somebody was killed.
So what happens if he does the act, not sure if he's guilty or not guilty, he wants to Ir Miklat, what happens if they found him guilty?
So we said that, the Mishnah says, they then bring him back to Beit Din. Right. They escort him back to Beit Din. Okay, and then when they decide he needs to go to Galut, they send 2 Talmidei Chachamim back with him, right, to encourage the guy not to kill him. All right, remember that? Clear? Okay. So in the sefer I was telling you about, he offers a few other beautiful interpretations about why shchichi rotzchim would indicate that you needed more Ir Miklats.
What's a shchichi?
Yeah, it says it here.
Shchichi rotzchim means that there are more murderers.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the answer?
Well, according to the Rambam, it said that many of the intentional murderers made it seem like it was unintentional.
Excellent. So answer number 1 would be people sketching. Right. Making it look like an intentional murder was unintentional. That's a good one answer. But he brought at least 4 or 5 different answers. And I want to share them with you because some of them are brilliant.
This is Rabbi Mitnick's book?
Sorry?
This is Rabbi Mitnick?
The green one that you brought me? Yes. Yes. Unbelievable. Really, unbelievable. So one answer is, he says as follows. He says, in a city that has a lot of murderers, what's everybody carrying to protect themselves from murderers?
Weapons.
Weapons. everybody's carrying a gun, there's going to be more accidents. Brilliant answer.
Yeah, but that's against the NR.
Sorry?
It's like interesting now because the argument is there'll be less crime if there's more. I mean, not.
Supposedly,
Yeah, today's day and
less.
age.
No.
Protect
No,
everybody.
all of those cases that you find with people dying are almost always, there's more people dying from accidental gun discharges in their homes than from purposeful murders. That's why they have you lock the things up separately. There's all these kids that wind up taking it out, shooting their mother in the face because she didn't let them play Fortnite. You know, so all this stuff, a lot of stuff happens by accident or accidents happen. In a town that has far more weapons, what's going to happen? There's going to be more accidents. Simple answer, beautiful answer. Next answer. Next answer is, and this is also genius, and this I think to me speaks much more to it. What happens when one person dies in a city that no one ever gets murdered, killed, raped, mugged, nothing, drugged?
Heard around the world.
People go nuts. 10 people die in a year. 1,000 people die in a year. In war, what does life mean? Nothing. In a town of shchichi rotzchim, the way people think about the value and protection of a human life gets degraded over time. So you'll have more accidents because people are less having a care of the value of human life, which I thought was such a deep, psychological, powerful answer on behalf of the Gemara. So that's a third answer. And there was one more answer. There was one more answer as well that made an impression. That made an impression on me in terms of this. Why does shchichi rotzchim change the need? If there's more purposeful murders, why do you have more galuts? And I love this answer the most. The psychological answer I like the most on a psychological level. This answer I like the most as a rabbi. I don't know if you remember, but Rashi says something on this pasuk. He quotes the Midrash. The Midrash about a person who gets galut for killing accidentally. What does Rashi say? Rashi says, you have a guy he killed inadvertently, but nobody knows, there was no witnesses. So what does God do? God makes him fall on someone with witnesses so that he could get his punishment of galut. And who does he fall on? He falls on a guy who killed on purpose, who we were never able to get him the death penalty. So that guy winds up getting killed for the act of murder he did on purpose. Says the Mefarshim, in a town that has a lot of murders on purpose, what's going to happen? God's going to arrange for accidental murders to happen so that guy who's supposed to get killed winds up. And that on a rabbi level, I love the most.
Poetic justice.
Poetic justice. Excellent. How brilliant. So 3 different answers to this question that we dealt with in the Gemara up until now. Let's continue. Gemara asks now specifically, we are on 10 Yud Amud Aleph, or about a little bit before the wide lines, or in the 10A1. V'chevron ir miklatu. The Gemara says, what are you talking about? Chevron is the ir miklat? That's what you want to tell me? The ir miklat was always the cities of the Leviim. But who got Chevron? We have a pasuk in the Torah. Vayitenu lekalev et Chevron. They gave Chevron to Kalev just like Moshe had said, which means that in whose portion did Kalev fall out? Did Chevron fall out in the portion of Kalev? No, that's a good point. Kalev comes from Yehuda, but this Chevron was given to Kalev as an extra thing on top of it because of what Kalev had done. Okay,
He was one of the good spies.
he was one of the good spies, Kalev and Yoshua. Okay, so Kalev gets an extra portion of Chevron, which is over and above what he would have gotten as his regular Yerusha, as his regular Nachala, as part of Shevet Yehuda. But point is, it was not Shevet Levi. And all of the Arei Miklat, as we saw earlier, are Shevet Levi. The Gemara says, so how could that be Amar Abaye? And the Mishnah over here says, Hebron was one of the 6. Amar Abaye, Abaye says, Parvada. What we're talking about over here, that Kalev got, was not the actual city of Hebron. What we're talking about that Kalev got was the outskirts of the city. Dichtiv, because the pasuk says, "Ve'et sedeh ha'ir ve'et chatzerea natenu leKalev ben Yefuneh." They gave him the suburbs of Hebron. They gave him the courtyards of Hebron. And he actually bears it out, because if you look at the first pasuk, where's the first pasuk? Vayetenu leKalev. That pasuk is in the Torah. Is in Shoftim, in chapter 1. The next pasuk, Ve'et tzedei ve'et chatzereah. Where do we find that pasuk? That's in Yehoshua, right? In not in Shoftim. So you see that what did Kalev actually receive? One pasuk tells us they gave him Hebron, but elsewhere, when it tells us what they're giving him, it says ve'et tzedei ha'ir ve'et chatzereah. They didn't give him the ear; they gave him the fields of the city. They gave them the courtyards of the city. And in the time, clearly, what the Gemara is hinting at is that what the fields of the city of Hebron, what were they called? Hebron. They were just the fields of the city of Hebron. They weren't given individual names. The Gemara asks, "V'kedesh ir miklat havai." One of the ones that were mentioned in the Mishnah, you had Hebron and you had Kedesh, right? Was also listed in the Mishnah, right? The Gemara asks, "Is Kedesh one of the ir miklat? How could that be?" V'aktiv harim mivtzar tzidim char v'tzama v'chamat rakat v'kineret v'kedesh v'edrei. All of these cities that we just mentioned were listed as cities that were heavily fortified. Which cities did you bring in massive fortifications, build walls around? Which were those cities? Those cities were the major cities. Those are the ones that needed the biggest protection. So if that's the case, the city of Kedesh was a huge city. So why is that a problem? So it was a huge city. It can't also be Ir Miklat if it's a huge city. Ask the Gemara, Vitanya, the Braita tells us, Arim halalu en osin otan lo tirin ketanim. When you wanted to isolate and designate these cities to be the cities for Ir Miklat, you would not specify or create those cities in tirin ketanim, in the small little towns, velo kirachim gedolim, and not in the big cities. Ela ayarot benoniot. You would make the refugee cities be medium-sized cities. And since that's the case, so the Pasuk is telling us that Kedesh was heavily fortified, indicating it's a big city. The Braita is telling you that you don't specify the cities of Ir Miklat unless they're medium-sized, not big, not small. So which is it? The Gemara answers, Amar Rav Yosef, Tarte Kedesh Havai. There were two Kedeshes. What are these two Kedeshes? Amar Rav Ashi, Kegon Slikum ve'akra de Slikum. Right away, you give the little laugh that Stanley and Morris gave, and then you read the Gemara, Amar Rav Ashi, and Rav Ashi explains that actually it's not laugh-worthy, it's exactly what we just said before. You had Slikum, which was the city of Seleucia. Why was it called Seleucia? Because of the Seleucid Empire that conquered Eretz Israel, okay? Ve'akra de Slikum, and there was a village of Slikum, which was on the outskirts of Slikum, and that was a much smaller town. So effectively, what the Gemara over here is saying, Tarti is really what the Gemara already said before. Hebron went to Kalev. Then another pasuk says, Hebron got the fields outside of Kalev got the fields outside of Hebron. Aren't those pasukim contradicting each other? The answer is no. The fields outside of Hebron are also called Hebron. So same thing here. The city, the city called Kedesh, had outside of it a small little suburb, satellite city that whatever you would call it, and that was also called a part of Hebron. That was also called Kedesh, like that was also called Slikum. The Gemara continues. Okay, now let's look at the Braita itself. Gufa. Every time you see the word Gufa, what is it telling you? It's almost always expressing the concept. Let's go back now to the Mishnah we just quoted and expand our operations there.
What does the actual word gufa mean?
Goof, like the goof.
Body?
The body itself.
Right.
The body of the text.
The main thing.
Yes. Gufa, this itself, you don't make the cities of refuge, they're not small cities. And not the big villages, not the big areas. Small, medium-sized cities. The Braita continues now. You only would choose cities for these to be near Mikom Maim, near a source of water. And if there's no water in that place, you got to order kept well / Me'eden / what was the one in Deal Forever? Right on the tracks.
Oh, I forget the name of it. But
Not Poland Springs. Before Poland Springs, there's another name. Whatever that
Deer
one was.
Valley.
Was it what? Deer Valley? Was that what it was?
Deer Park. Deer Park.
No, Deer Park is the bottled water. This was like the water cooler machines.
The big coolers.
I think it might have been Deer Valley, but I think it's still another one. It'll come back. I thought Kepwell for a
Gotta have a
minute.
deer if we both thought it was.
Northwell, maybe Northwell.
Something, I don't know.
Something. All right, we'll come back to it. The type of thing that my mother,
Crystal Spring.
would know right away. What?
Either that or you can ask the Romans to build you an aqueduct.
Exactly. That might be easier than remembering the name of this little kind of water thing that was behind the tracks. Okay. Now, says the Gemara, says the Braita, you have to have a source of water there, either natural or they would bring water to the place, right? Now, what Nathan is saying here is absolutely correct. It doesn't mean that you need to deliver bottles of water. It doesn't mean you need to hire a water carrier to transport it. You could dig ditches, create aqueducts, create rivers, whatever you needed to do in order to get water there. But you had to make sure that there was water coming to that city. The only place you would put them, only if there's a marketplace. Why? So that the person would have, so there'd be food. And you would only put these cities, the ones that you would dictate to be the cities of refuge, when there's a number of people, there's a good number of people living in the town, a nice size population. If you had somehow everyone decided to leave and move somewhere else, so suddenly there's not so many people in the population, or there's not so much water, or there's not so much whatever. What would you be obligated to do? Mosifin alehen. You would have to add to them. So you can't say, listen, I made sure when I picked the city that it had water. The fact that now the well dried up, the fact that now someone diverted the river, it's not my problem. We made sure when we chose them. It needs to be something that is constantly maintained and upheld. What happens if the people leave the area? Mosifin alehem. We would add to those people. We would bring other people. Nitma'atu diyurehen. What if the people that lived in the city itself would disappear? There would be less of them. Mevi'im lahem kohanim levim Israelim. You would bring in kohanim, levim, and Israelim. At first glance, you look at this Gemara, you think the Gemara is saying or. Even though normally it would be a city of Levites, you could bring in Kohanim or you could bring in Yisraelim. However, many of the commentators learn that it means no. You bring in an admixture of Kohanim, Levim, and Yisraelim.
Why would they want to live there?
In the Ir Miklat?
Yeah.
Well, some people didn't have a good portion to live in. So you take a person who needs a place to live, and you move him into this city of refuge.
You give like benefits to them to live there?
No.
They just set you up there.
No, the benefit is the land, that they gave you the space, okay? Ve'en mocherin b'hem. Now we have to figure out, why do we need all of the people? What do you need all the types for? Ve'en mocherin b'hem, you don't sell in the city. This is very interesting. Lo kli zayin, lo kli mitzuda. You're not allowed to have, there's complete gun control. You're not allowed to sell weapons. You can't sell also hunting or trapping equipment. Divrei Rabbi Nechemia. This is what Rabbi Nechemia says. The Chachamim say no. They allow us to sell weapons in the place. How come Rabbi Nechemia doesn't want you selling weapons or trapping? Because then the Goel Adam is going to come to the city and he's going to buy a gun, he's going to buy a knife, and he's going to kill the guy in the city where he's not allowed to kill him. So we don't want to encourage that. So therefore you can't sell things that were designed for military or fatal use, or even things to use for hunting, because you could kill with those things. Those are weapons of mass destruction. Yani, Divrei Rebbe Chachamim say that they're allowed. V'shavin she'em porsim, but both of them hold that you're not allowed to spread over there betochan mitzudot ve'en mafshilin letochan chavalim. You can't create a business of spinning the ropes, and you also can't have trappers come by laying out traps in the area of the city. What does this have to do? What's the reason why you shouldn't be able to do that? The Braita continues, we're very nervous that if you have these types of things going on in the city, you'll have lots of people coming from the outside into the interior of the city, and it'll become much more difficult to monitor who came in. If, as an example, you have hunting and trapping going on in the city, people will come, hunters and trappers. And what What are they always carrying with them? Weapons. Now you're welcoming these people into the city. So now you can't say, what's going on? Why do you have a weapon on you? The guy says, I'm hunting. What do you mean? It's hunting season. It's rabbit season, right? So I'm coming for this reason. That's why I'm here. Whereas if you don't have trapping in the city, you don't sell weapons in the city. If the guy comes in with the weapon, TSA will stop him.
Right.
We'll figure out why he's here. And we could stop him from killing the person who's on home base. Same thing with having a large population. Why do you want a large population? You want to ensure that this guy is not going to be able to walk in with a fighting force and just take the guy out. If there's a population coming and all of a sudden some guy wants to come with his little militia and take you out, then the people are going to stop him. I was thinking perhaps that's the reason why you have Kohen, Levi, and Yisrael. Because if you have Yisrael, or you have Levi, or you have Kohen, the Goel Adam might be related to the people that are living in the city. They might come from the same tribe. They might feel a certain sense of affinity to that cause. So what do? We bring in a mixture of Kohen, Levi, and Yisrael. So that way, there's for sure going to be some people that are not from his tribe, his family, and hopefully they'll be the ones that will stop. In fact, if we go back to what we learned earlier, when we learned earlier about the fact that the two Talmidei Chachamim accompany him, why do you need two Talmidei Chachamim? What was the purpose of the Talmidei Chachamim, if you remember?
Protect him.
How do they protect him?
Talk to the Goel Hadam to try to convince him not to kill the guy.
Right, so if it was just protection, then they would just send bodyguards. But we said last class, if the guy has bodyguards, what's he going to do? He's just going to bring more bodyguards. So now, not only is this guy going to get killed, when the bodyguards get involved, then all of a sudden everybody's dying. So the whole point of this is to protect human life. We're actually inviting more bloodshed. So what do we send with him? We send with him someone to convince the guy to talk him down, to de-escalate the situation. Don't do it, it's not the right thing, think of your olam haba, give him a class, Rabbi Hananya. Okay, fine. If that's the reason why you have two, why do you need two? Have one.
Not to be a witness.
Just in case someone dies, you need two witnesses.
Interesting, okay, so one answer that we gave was that if the guy killed him when he wasn't allowed to kill him, then there'll be two witnesses. Problem is, they're only accompanying him to the Ir Miklat, where if he kills him, you don't need witnesses because he's allowed to do it. Remember? He's allowed to kill him. The answer to that is...
Around at the city limit?
Sorry, yes, they turn around the city limit.
So they can't be witnesses, because if he killed him outside, then he's patur, and if they killed him inside the city...
That's what I just said.
Witnesses aren't there.
They're not there. That's what I just said, exactly. So there's no point. So what's brought down is very interesting. We say that when a Talmid Chacham is traveling, there should be two people with him. One of the reasons is because we say, what if someone has to go to the bathroom? So he'll go off by himself, and then they'll be still on the road by themselves. So what we always wanted was a scenario where if one would leave, there would still be someone with. Imagine one goes to the bathroom and the Goel Adam comes, and there's only one. There's no one to talk him down. So we wanted to create a situation where even if one needed to go to the bathroom or to pray, there was always going to be somebody there available to be able to speak on his behalf.
There's a couple of, isn't that in Sota also the Kohanim, the two Kohanim?
Yes, with two Talmidei Chachamim are traveling together. That's what I was referencing. Even there, they're supposed to do it with two. And the reason for that is because we're worried if one of them goes, that there should still be somebody else. And that's why we dictate that there should be two. Okay, says the Gemara, so what we're trying to do is to ensure that this guy is not coming in. Now, my friends, what would you assume is the reason why we made all of these things? You can't have this there, you can't have that there. Why? The Torah says that there's a setting aside of Ir Miklat, and that the Ir Miklat is a safe space, is a sanctuary city. You can't get the guy there. But who said, why are we now responsible to not sell weapons anywhere in the city? No trapping is allowed to be going on. No one can start ropes or us. What's going on over here? Where do all these laws come from? The idea that, if that's next to water, and if there's no water, you have to bring water, and if there's people, you have to start making, shifting people around. It's like redistricting. What's going on over here? Where did this come from? The Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Mai Kera. What does the pasuk say? V'nas el echad ha'arim ha'el v'chai. And this accidental murderer, he will run to one of these cities, v'chai, and he will live. The Gemara says, Avid le midi tetehevi lechiyuta. The The Gemara is understanding not vachai as an outcome of the fact that he got to the city, but rather, exactly, it's like, and you'll ensure, let him get to the city, vachai, and you'll make sure that he lives. Avid le midi, do for him something that he should live. So if there's no water, what's going to happen? You're going to die. So you have to make sure that there's water there. If there's water that was there and then ran out, I need to replenish that water. If he loses the benefit of having people around that are a deterrent for the guy to come with a posse and knock him out, make sure that there's people there in order to defend, in order to be able to uphold that fence yet again. And we learned that all from the word vachai.
Is water literal? Because I know water also represents Torah.
Hey, says Gemara, Tana, Talmid Shegala, if you have a student that goes into Galut, Megalin Rabbi Mo, we make his rabbi go to Galut with him. None of you,
In a class once before.
none of you better kill accidentally, all right?
You said this in a class.
Shneemar v'chai. It says in the pasuk, and you will live. Avid le'midi, do for him something that he should have life. And what does it say about the Torah? Right?
Like water.
Right? Etz chaim hi lemachazikim ba. It's a tree of life that we have, that we can hold on to, and that holding on to brings us life. So since the Torah is something you can't live without, like the story of Rabbi Yehuda and the fish in the water, right? If that's the case, so therefore this Talmid, he has to have his rabbi with him. By the way, it's not even just if there's no yeshiva, so he needs a rabbi. Even if he's got rabbis there, he needs his rabbi.
I guess they're saying that the rabbi is somewhat responsible for teaching this person.
Sorry?
Are they saying that the rabbi is also somewhat responsible?
How could you say someone responsible, it's accidental?
Maybe he was careless.
Wasn't with the rabbi enough.
Wait. What do you mean? If he was careless, then it's on purpose. It's mezid. What was the the second answer to the question of the shchichi rotzchim needing a city of miklat? That in a town where everybody's getting killed, the value of human life goes down, and then there's more accidental murders because people are not being as careful. If the rabbi had a student that was able to be careless, he did not teach him properly of the value of Jewish life. So it's not that he's careless,
I didn't finish it.
but he didn't add.
God, I was waiting for you to.
He didn't add the bit that would have made him, even if it wasn't about being careless, but he would have made him more careful, right? With two L's. Okay, my friends. So what we have over here is something very interesting. We have a limud of vachai, which teaches us the principle of a rabbi, but also the principle of water, the principle of population, the principle of a marketplace. Now, I was thinking to myself earlier on that the Braita, it has to be so. It must be so. I don't even know to a certain degree why the Gemara felt you needed a pasuk. Let me explain. Let's say there's no water in the city. Let's say there's no grocery in the city. Where does everyone get their groceries?
Outside.
Somewhere else. This guy can't leave. It can't be that the Torah is going to give you an ir miklat, which is only saves you if you're in the boundary of the city.
He could leave.
And no, he can't. What do you mean if he leaves?
He could go to the next year McLeod.
Yeah, but he's on the way. He kill
Yeah,
him.
he's taking a chance, but he can leave.
That's not.
That's not a Christmas.
That means he can't leave.
What do you mean? We're talking about how to prohibit someone from coming in by not providing weapons, not selling weapons that have traps, etc. Why? Because we're afraid that the guy, the Goel Hadam, is going to come into the city and kill him.
Right.
So not just because the guy's in Ir Miklat doesn't mean he's immune from death.
No, not immune from death, but that he has the protection of the city. But if you build a city that has no protection, because I'll give you a city. Imagine, do you need a Torah to make sure that in the city there's a house, right? Right? Obviously, the guy's going to live there, right? Make sure that in the city that has people, that there's food to eat. Of course, that would
why
be.
are they saying this?
That's my point. My point is, I don't need a pasuk to tell me. The whole point is create cities where the guy can go live. If the guy can't live there, because by definition, he needs to leave every time he needs to get a drink, then that's not a city of refuge.
I think it's so comfortable for them.
I don't know. Why do I need a pasuk for that?
Hold on.
Yeah.
We're sending Talmidei Chachamim with him on the road.
Yeah.
They're telling you the rabbi has to go with him.
By the way, I feel like Eric Adams learned this Gemara. Take care of the criminals more than you take care of anybody.
but
I don't get this service.
Is it so far-fetched to then have to feed him and give him water?
The opposite. I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying it has to be that when the Torah says, make him a city like this, that in the city are the most basic things that a city has. Because if not, you didn't provide him a city of refuge.
We live in an ethical society where we don't want to promote killing.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's the reason?
I didn't catch what you said.
If you don't provide for these things, then you're basically allowing not random, but, people going out and killing other people. They have a legal right to do it, but you want to try to prohibit that. In a civil society, that's what we do.
But it's only...
1 minute. You're arguing my side, not the other side.
Yeah.
I want the other side. Again, to me, it is obvious that the city has to have water. So why, when the Gemara says the city has to have water, and then the Gemara asks, "My kira, where do I know that this city of refuge, that it needs to have water or food? How do I know that?" The Gemara says, because it says vachai. And if it didn't say vachai, what kind of city of refuge is it if the guy can't live there? What I'm saying is it's pashut.
I got it.
That's what I'm saying. So you need to give me a reason. Pshita. You need to give me a reason why I do need the pasuk. So what's happening over here is I wonder if the Gemara, when it says Maikra, is not saying what, like the way the Art Scroll translates it. Look at how he says Maikra. Maikra, what is the verse that teaches us these laws? Let me juxtapose that for 1 second with what Rashi says. Second to top line on the left side. Maikra. You see it?
Yeah.
What's the pasuk? Dimitakninan lehu lerotzchim davar shetzrichin lo. What is the pasuk that we are mitaken for the guy? What does mitaken mean?
Correct, yeah.
One way of reading the word mitaken is to correct. There's another way of reading it. Maybe what Rashi means is excellent.
Huh?
It's a takana.
You're making a takana?
Yeah, in other words, it's not that the pasuk obligated it. The pasuk is telling you the guy needs to live. Once I know from the pasuk that the guy needs to live, so what kind of takanot are we making? Which are pshita. Maybe the way to read Rashi with mitakaninan is not that the pasuk is what tells you, and without the pasuk you wouldn't know it, but rather that once the pasuk says that the guy, when he arrives here, he's going to be safe and he's going to live, obviously includes all the things that would be required for a guy to be able to live. So maybe what Rashi is telling us is the answer to this question. Let's continue.
Obliging us.
I don't know what you mean when you're saying that.
Obliging us to provide food, water.
No, I'm saying specifically not that. If the pasuk is obliging us, I'm saying that doesn't make any sense. Because once you tell me it's a city of refuge, I don't need another pasuk. The very words Ir Miklat means it's a city of refuge. You don't need another pasuk to tell you, and you know what you're going to get in the city of refuge? Refuge. Also, a city. Like that is what it is, right? I wouldn't need you to say vachai. You know how you would juxtapose this? Nathan, take this as an example. Look at the second limud. The second limud makes sense to me. What does it mean when it says vachai that now his rabbi needs to go into galut for 50 years until the Kohen Gadol dies? That's a chidush. That's a v'chai. That's a chidush that you'd learn out of a pasuk, an extra word, right? What are you teaching me with the first v'chai? So I'm saying maybe that's what I'm learning from the word mitakeninan in Rashi. Maybe he doesn't mean to say that I learned it from the word v'chai, rather that the takanot that we instituted because they made sense just came from the fact that the Torah told you that if you get to the city, you're going to live. Okay? Let's continue. The Gemara says, Amar Reb Zeira. Reb Zeira learns from this, Mikan shlo yishne adam letalmid she'eno hagun. Careful when you pick your students.
Who wants to be a Rav now?
Right? You're going to pick whoever you want as a student, right? You know, who knows where your students are going to drag you. Okay? Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Harav shegala, when you have a rabbi that goes into galut, migalin yeshiva toimo. The whole yeshiva goes with him.
Oh boy.
Right? Isn't that Majnun? Imagine, by the way, Rabbi Akiva Pre-Omer. Pre the Omer, right? Imagine that.
Right.
The guy's got 24,000 students. Imagine this. Then one of the 24,000 falls off a roof.
They all got.
The whole yeshiva, he now has a new building campaign. Where are you moving? To this middle-sized city. Exactly. Ir Benoni, whatever. I don't know. I just hope it has water.
Yeshiva de Benoni.
Exactly. Right? Now 24,000 people move into this small city. Now why would you say that the yeshiva needs to go with? That the rabbi needs to go with, I understand. But that the yeshiva needs to go with as well? The Gemara answers, Annie, is this true? Right? Is this true? Rabbi Yochanan used to say, how do we know that when a person learns Torah, that they koltin, the same word that we had with Irmiklat, that they absorb and protect him? Shneemar, like it says, et betzer bamidbar. It says the city in the Midbar, in the desert, that Moshe set aside as one of the 3 Transjordan cities, right, was Bet. And Moshe set it aside. Uchtiv batre, and right after that in the pasuk, what's the next pasuk? V'zot haTorah ra'shesa Moshe lifnei bnei Israel. And this is the Torah that Moshe sat, as what's it called? The Torah that Moshe placed before the Jewish people. So you see that Moshe Rabbeinu plugged in Betzer as a city of refuge, and then immediately after that, all the 3 cities, and then immediately afterwards it says V'zot haTorah. So if you see that divrei Torah are koltin, if divrei Torah are those things create for you a sense of protection and refuge. So then why does the Torah, why does this rabbi need to now go to this place? He studied Torah. Didn't his Torah protect him? The Torah of the rabbi.
It's not 24/7.
The Gemara answers, Lo kasha, no question. Ha be'idna de'asik ba. This is in the time when he's dealing with it. Ha be'idna de'lo asik ba. This protection that we're talking about from the Torah happens when he's studying. But what happened when he was not studying? Then he doesn't have that protection, and that's when the refuge of the city is required for him. The Gemara says, and maybe instead you could say, my koltin. What does it mean that the words of Torah koltin, that they give you this refuge, the same word that we have with ir miklat? The Gemara answers, that's talking about when you have a death that happens from a cold, from pneumonia, from some disease, from a tornado, from something that happens in a natural way. But the fact that a Goel Adam could come with his bloodthirsty, revenge-fueled killing party, right? There, a Talmid Chacham also might get swept up and something could happen to him. So therefore, even though the Torah protects from Malach HaMavet, it doesn't necessarily protect from the person himself. Which, by the way, leads us down, if you remember, the rabbit hole that we went down with regards to someone using his free will to kill. Remember that? Yeah. And we explained the difference between natural.
Involved in every
exactly. So, because otherwise you have a very tough question over here. What do you mean? When a human being kills him, isn't that the Malach HaMavet? And clearly in our Gemara, the answer is no. So you see, this Gemara seems to side with that opinion that we discovered in the conversation of Nachashim ve'Akravim, Yeshbo with the pit and Yosef and the brothers.
There's a note on the bottom that talks about the death of David HaMelech.
Yes.
What's that about?
We'll come to that in just a second, okay? He made the comment, I just wanted to hold off from it. Kihad Rav Chizda, with the same concept that we find for Rav Chizda. Haviyati v'garit b'be'erav, he was sitting and he was studying in the house of Torah. V'lo yachol shlicha d'malacha d'mota l'mikrav. The angel of death could not come, he could not approach him. Because he did not stop learning. Okay? Slik v'yativ a'arzad be'erav. What did he do? He went outside v'yativ, he sat on the tree outside the house of the yeshiva. Paka arza v'shatik. In the middle, all of a sudden, the tree cracks from the angel sitting upon it, whatever that means, and in the noise that was made in the tree, he got, Rav Chizda for 1 second was startled by the noise, stopped learning, and in that minute, the Malach HaMavet was able to take his neshama. The exact story of David HaMelech follows this exact scenario. David HaMelech knew that he was going to die on Shabbat. He knew. So what did he do? Every Shabbat, from the beginning of Shabbat until the end of Shabbat, study Torah straight, because he knew the Torah is magina umatzila. It protects, it shields, and it protects. The Malach HaMavet can't do anything. 1 Shabbat, 2 Shabbats, 3 Shabbats, he's going Majnun. Until finally, what does he do? He makes a noise in the tree, a rustling in the tree. David HaMelech climbs up the ladder. He shakes the ladder, David HaMelech falls. And the minute that David HaMelech falls, he loses for 1 second concentration on the Torah. He no longer has that protection of the Torah, and he kills him. Now, this is not to say that a person...
How did he actually die?
Malach HaMavet. His heart stopped.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So from the fall.
We didn't get the autopsy
That's
results.
No, that's how it's reported in the
It doesn't
notes.
say necessarily from the fall.
How does it actually say that David HaMelech
It just says that he died.
Oh, it just says.
Yeah.
So that's Midrash.
He was gathered unto his people. He was gathered unto his people. Now, it doesn't. The Malach HaMavet didn't need to kill him from the fall. He just needed to generate the fall so that David HaMelech would stop learning for a second, so that he could do his job. Okay. Now, to be clear, according to the Gemara that we just saw 1 second ago, how many people hated David HaMelech? Anyone who studied Melachim will know. All of the people. Everyone. Everyone that David HaMelech hangs with hated him. It was like Majnun. He had enemies, snakes in the grass, everywhere. Okay? And if the Torah learning protects you from Malach HaMavet, but not from the people, so all the Malach HaMavet needed to do was create a scenario
He was in danger.
where the people themselves would kill him on Shabbat.
Why did he do it himself?
So why did he need to do this?
Nishika, like
Huh?
Hashem, like a Nishika.
We don't know. Yeah, now you're making up that he died in Nishika. You have to have proof of that. Right? Because we know specifically, like Aaron HaKohen had Mitat Nishika. Moshe Rabbeinu was jealous of the Mitat Nishika that Aaron experienced, and he asked Hashem that he should die the same way. But like you gotta have a source for that. Ready for this? Come on. Anyone? David HaMelech did not have the protection of Torah against his enemies, but he had other protections against his enemies.
He was fortified. He was the
He was
king.
the king.
Yes, but that didn't stop anyone from coming for the crown.
What was
Like,
it?
even his son was coming.
His own son came after him, right? Shaul HaMelech beforehand, Avshalom, Amnon. It didn't stop. Shaul, everyone, right? Yeah, David had the roughest life.
So what was his production?
The answer is that for David HaMelech, David HaMelech, not only was he a fighter and a warrior, yes, all of that, which would make it less likely that someone trying to lead a coup against him, but we know, what does it say explicitly in Tehillim? This is a mizmor of David HaMelech, Biborcho lifnei Avshalom beno. So we know that David, at some points, had to run. He couldn't just sit and fight.
But he created the Tehillim during that time.
The answer is, and this is psycho. David HaMelech, when he's writing Tehillim, he took every negative experience and he turned it into Tehillim. The Malach HaMavet knows that if David HaMelech has a negative experience, what's he going to do with it?
Positive.
Immediately he's turning it into Tehillim. David HaMelech, while he's running from Avshalom, what's he doing? He's writing on the run. The Malach HaMavet understood that the only way to get him is going to be to get him when there isn't an enemy, when he's not expecting it, when he can't respond and he can't react. Because the minute David HaMelech could react, what did David HaMelech turn every adversity into?
Torah.
Va'ani tefilati lecham re'et ratzon. Chachamim say, Va'ani tefilati does not just mean, and I pray. I am my prayer. Va'ani tefilati. Malach HaMavet understood, only way to get him is going to be by natural means, by natural causes, and by shocking him or having him respond to something unexpected. Baruch Adonai Le'olam.